Hi. So unwittingly, I thought that I had the microphone on when I was doing my last recording, and I discovered that no, it was off, and so I turned it into a time lapse type video because it was too long anyway. But I wanted to kind of really quickly review what I had covered that I thought you were listening to, but there's no way it was recorded. Um, so just kind of walking you through this, what I did to create this gecko was I started off with this sort of dark green outline, and I had also taken out the background so that I could see it's actually a chameleon. I had to look it up. I was like, all right, what is this? It is a chameleon. It's a veiled chameleon, and apparently they come from more like the Middle East, not from these piney woodsy areas. But this is a fantasy painting. Um, so one of the things that I try not to do, and I'm trying to, even though it's a fantasy painting, try not to be too realistic, or try not to. I try not to have my outlines be too strong, because one of the things I talked about is, if you look at people, they generally don't have a big black outline around them. And yet that's something like, but it's somehow this convention that works with cartoons a lot of times. And, that's fine. It's wonderful, actually. Some of my favorite cartoons have, like the oatmeal. He uses big black lines around everything he draws pretty much, and I love them. But for a more naturalistic effect, you want to kind of try to be very judicious in your use of lines. So I created this, and then what I did is added the color. And originally I did this, the color in like two or three layers. So there was like a green layer, and then I added the yellow on top of the green layer. And I also played around a little bit with like, oh, how's it look, moving the color layer on top of what I would call my grayscale layer. I decided I preferred it like that. I would encourage you guys, whether you're working digitally or with traditional materials, to do little experiments like that. Like I do that all the time, and sometimes it bites me in the butt because I'm kind of like, oh my god, why did I have to experiment with this? Now I am way behind. But that said, I think in the long run that does pay off, having that attitude. Um, so those, oh, the other thing I talked a little bit about was the texture, and just barely outlining the little dots. I'm not going to try to do every single scale, and in fact that would kind of wind up looking really weird, like he was covered in chainmail, or they were covered in chainmail. We're going to use gender neutral pronouns for this one. And also playing around with the different tools to add highlights. I kind of alternated between using the pencil tool and the sort of watercolor brush tool. I think I decided that I like the pencil tool a little bit better. So the other thing that I did was I took the opacity down. Originally, when I after I had done Mr. Chameleon, um, them chameleon, that originally when I done the chameleon and I saw it like this, I was like, wow, it's like he's in this. No, they are in this bright sunlight from the Mediterranean, and the rest of the landscape is this cloudy, misty, different dragony type thing. And there I have Mr. Goofy Chameleon. And so what I did, rather than repainting it, I just took the opacity down and just toned that down a little bit. So there's a little bit of drama, but it still fits in there. A little side note too, there's some other things that are like inconsistent in terms of creating, you on these trees. I have these little highlights. I think I'm still thinking about when we were doing the highlights coming through the leaves on the last lesson, and I'm like, I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna leave it in there because I think it looks cool. But in terms of it being realistic, naturalistic, no, totally lying. Okay, all right. Now that that's said, I am going to get into painting the mist. And I want to really stress to you that painting the mist I'll work a little bit differently because this is digital and I can kind of move through the layers. But if I was painting this using regular material or traditional materials, I'd be using probably the Pro White, um, and thinning it out with a lot of water. I might also use a little bit of acrylic, and again, probably thinning it out. I might even go for an iridescent. If you have an iridescent white acrylic, that's a really cool effect to give a little bit of a shimmer type thing. Some people will be like, "Oh, that's so tacky." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever. I'm over it." All right. So that said, the other thing too I ran into is I tend to like, go through so many layers on these things that it winds up telling me like, "Oh, you're out of layers." So I'm gonna start to combine some of these. Although I playing around a little bit with that. All right, fine. I'll just merge that down. And sometimes what'll happen with this is that, and maybe I'll get rid of that one. That's my little underline sketch. I mean, the little blue sketch kind of gives you an idea though, like of how you can draw almost nothing, but it just gives you a sense of where to go. And this might actually be an empty layer so that I can make that my mist layer. I'm going to move that to the top, but I might be moving it around a little bit as I work. And so let me just get into it. Maybe there's another. Oh, cool. Good. So apparently I have, sometimes I make a layer and I don't use it and I don't know why. I'm sure that is operator error. And that's the underdrawing for Mr. Chameleon. So I'll leave that. So I'm going to kind of experiment. I'm going to start off with the watercolor tool, and I'm going to also make it very, the digital equivalent of adding a lot of water. So I'm going to make it very faint. And I'm just going to see what does that do? Is that, okay, it's not bad. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag too. I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm going to make it really, really faint. I could also, oh, there we go. So, now we're happy. And the deal with mist is that a lot of times what it likes to do is kind of like kind of go down and gather in the lower areas of your mountains and stuff. So, and it's best, I find, you want to be able to see a little bit through that as well. And for me, at least, the key to it has been light touch. And I feel like there's a little bit of conflict here because my trees in this foreground are looking. I just took the opacity down a little bit. They were just looking a little bit too bright, and I think I might do that too with the. Yeah, that feels better. Like before, it just felt like, well, why would you have mist on a sunny day? And it's like, it's my fantasy. If I can put a chameleon in here, then I can make a mist. And I'm like, yeah, all right. But it really wasn't very believable, in spite of my little defensive mechanisms going on there. And I feel like I've got this little. At this point, I see too. Like sometimes it can be a little bit too faded, so you might have to just adjust, and that would again be the same thing with the Pro White. You know, you can always add more. It's sometimes a little hard to go back. You can well, I started to say you can never go back, but you can. Yeah, you can a little bit. It depends, more or less. And I think I'm also gonna take up the opacity of this, and it feels like why okay. Sometimes it just feels like part of it too is finding out, like, wait, am I on the wrong layer? That's always fun. I would just love doing that on this demo. Yes, I am on the wrong layer, so that's what I'm going to do is hit the back button a lot of times. And it's this layer down, I'm actually on my mountain layer, my foreground mountain layer. No, no, no. I do not want you there. I can't believe I'm being caught on camera with this. Maybe I'll just turn this into a time-lapse video. Okay, that's better. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. So that's the layer I want it to be on, which is, just underneath the gecko. In fact, I'm going to make it, or Chameleon, I'm going to make it the top layer. Alright, see, and now all of a sudden you can see, like, oh, wow, that is a lot brighter. In fact, that is way too bright. So I'm going to back to the drawing board, play around with the opacity, play around with the size a little bit. There we go. Much, much happier. And it wasn't entirely bad that it was, on that layer, but if I did have it on that layer, then if I wanted to, like, move it around, or I'll show you a quick tip with doing the opacity. I think I might even just have this mist, like, coming up the mountain. And he's like, ha. I don't know about the expression on him. He's so goofy. But I'm going to leave him because it makes me happy. I could make something more serious and, whatever. One of the things I kind of like about this is you can see how it kind of moves. It tries to mimic real watercolor and move like that. And just for the hell of it, I'm going to go super light and super big on this brush and see, like, maybe I'll just make the whole thing just a little bit more misty. Yeah, I'm kind of liking that. I said I'd teach you guys mist, and so, and, in some areas, like there's kind of a hot spot. Maybe, maybe not. One thing we've been talking a lot about in our discussions, is having something that is sort of overpowering other elements that doesn't really matter. So I'm going to actually take this little hot spot down. What I mean is that. And I'll just use the eraser tool and make it really fairly big and also fairly faint. I don't want to take it out entirely. I just want to smudge it down. And one of the things that I talked about in the demo that was not getting the sound happening was how I use the eraser tool more as a blender type thing than necessarily to just erase. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing here. There's some just slightly, ever so slight hard edges that I just want to take out. And sometimes I find it's easier to work like this, where you put something down and then you sort of partially take it up a little bit. Again, you can do this with, with the Pro White, with watercolor, with acrylic. I really, when I do this stuff, I don't really think that differently. Now, just for fun, I'm not sure if this is going to work. But I've already looked goofy enough to you guys, so I think we're at a point where we can take these chances. And I'm really, really enjoying seeing you guys take chances with a lot of things that you're doing and exploring. I'm just saying, like, maybe I want to have my Chameleon in the mist a little bit. Maybe he can be a little bit mysterious. He's so goofy. He's like, I'm trying to be mysterious, but I'm not. Yeah, you're not, dude. I'm not sure where there's this sort of like stray yellow mark down there. I'm like, where? Okay, so somehow that snuck onto that. I'm just gonna, what I'm doing is I'm hiding and showing the layer, and I'm looking at this sort of stray yellow mark that's down by his foot, and I'm like, alright, it seems to be, I have to take that out. It's, sometimes it's hard to tell, like, what layer you're on. Alright, back to this. And So now I'm just kind of going over, but I'm letting some elements show. Obviously, I think his goofy face is very important to show. I'm not very happy with the tail, but in the interest of time, I mean, I just kind of go over it and smooth it out and stuff. Gonna do that. And just leave. He's just such a goof. And take that back again a little bit. I kind of go. Why can't I do like a dragon that's like really got smoke? I could do a dragon that has smoke coming out of their ears, and smoke coming out of their nostrils and looking very serious. But I can't like this goofy guy. Now he's really shrouded in all kinds of mist. He almost looks like I get to go out and do evil. Like, woohoo, now's my chance. They can't see me. Woohoo. But, I want to keep his face kind of popping through in some ways. Like, hey. Okay. Let me take him out, though, so you guys can sort of see the effect, because it's a rather nice misty landscape without Mr. Chameleon. In fact, I think I'm going to just work on it a little bit to kind of show how I would just do that. Well, I would basically quickly describe it. I would just basically kind of smooth out some of any place where there's sort of a harder edge. But without the chameleon, it kind of loses it. That's like the main focus of the painting, so it kind of loses it without him. And then it just becomes this amorphous blob of whatever. One last note that is cool to do is, if you have another, yes, okay, is sometimes what you might want to do if things get a little bit too covered up by the mist is then go back and, just paint over the mist. So if I want these little treetops to stick up a little bit more, which I really do. It's kind of cool when they stick up. Then I'll just kind of, once it's dried, or maybe not. It's kind of cool to have it be, to let it bleed into it. So depending on how you feel, that your judgment with that, you might want to go back and just sort of go and darken up things a little bit. All right, you guys, I'm really excited to see I know I always say this, but I truly am. Every time you guys email me something, I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So I look forward to seeing what you do. I guess your challenge this week is to do a creature in the mist and have fun with it. All right, have a great week. Take care.